Ready?
This way I'll take the floor when we have our executive session before our next meeting.
Okay, it's 6 o'clock, so we will call the meeting to order for the CDBG program for federal fiscal year 2023. I just wanted to start tonight off, first off, just thanking Steve and East End Community Center for the space and welcoming State Rep Krupa Dawn with us today, and we have representation from City Council and all the people from the community, so I just appreciate everyone coming. And we are on Facebook Live. We'll have a time for comments after we run through the agenda. If you do have a comment, there's a button in front of you can push, and we'll kick it off towards the end of the agenda. But I just wanted to start off kind of introducing myself. My name is Crystal Simmons. I'm ecstatic to see so many people in the room tonight, because usually these meetings are kind of boring because it is a lot of me just talking. But it's information that we need to get out to you, so then we have citizens that are commenting on what we're doing, and we're being transparent and want you to see that. And we being the City of Uniontown and the Redevelopment Authority for the City of Uniontown. So we're here to discuss the CDBG program, but I wanted to tell you that I kind of how I got to where I am now. I came to Uniontown in March, and prior to that, beginning my career in local government around 10 years ago with Greene County Planning and Community Development. And before that, I worked in flooring sales for about 3 years. And I knew at that time that it wasn't real purposeful, except people getting new floors, and they were really excited about it, but it just didn't really have a lot of purpose. So in that summer of 2013 is when I started this with Greene County, and that is the first conference that I went to. It was like a week later. I was completely green, and I went to a conference in Harrisburg where they do the Community Development Practitioners Conference. They bring grantees in, you learn, you train, you network. And I remember being there and seeing all these like seasoned grantees that are like so kind of flustered and asking all these questions and really diligently taking notes. And I knew kind of then that the career path that I was choosing was going to be a lot more purposeful. So directly after that is when they held the Riley Stoy Award. I didn't know who Riley Stoy was. Does anyone here know who Riley Stoy is? I had no clue. So when they came up, there was this grantee who was just, they didn't know they were getting an award. They were so excited. They worked like 30 years in community development. And what the award was created for is basically to honor Riley Stoy, who began his community development career in Uniontown, in the position I am in right now. And at that time, it didn't resonate with me because I was working in Greene County, but I knew that it was a neighboring county. It was right over in Fayette. He had worked there for several years, and he left there to become the chief of small communities program at DCD, where they give the award out. And I just remember thinking when they passed that award out, wow, that's quite an accomplishment. You work 15 or 20 years, and you've touched so many lives. It's a lot better than carpet and wood floors. So when the Stoy Award is given, it just kind of displays that commitment to improving your communities. And Connellsville, actually, our neighbor, Michael Edward, in 2018 was awarded that award. And him and his team, they do great things. They've really done a lot. I think that they're a model, and I can see that Uniontown could get to that place as well. So in this past March when I got here, I knew there was this big task in front of me, and there was a lot of organization that needed to happen, and there was files and files and files. So there were federal files and state files and all these files that do we get rid of these? Do we have these? And as I was going through them, I come across this, which is a picture of Riley Stoy from when he was here in the 1975 or something, 1980. And when I found that, I was like, well, my gosh, for the past 10 years, I've seen, people, so nerve-wracked just to receive this award, and here we are, I'm going through these files and I find it. So I thought, well, I'm in the right spot. So I just wanted to share that little story because I want to pass on to you that I'm very passionate about the work I do. I am a hard worker. I want the best for any community that I work for. I'm from Greene County, but I'm learning that Uniontown as a strong network of people and has a lot of ability. There's so much potential, and we're at just this pivotal moment to be able to do great things in Uniontown. So I just wanted to share that. So to the basics. There was some handouts at your table, and I'll just kind of start with those. Some of these things I'm going to kind of talk at you a little. It's required language that I need to make sure that is presented, and we do that annually, and that's a federal requirement. So the purpose of the meeting today is a public hearing to discuss the CDBG program in general, and also the needs of the City of Uniontown and the performance under previously funded CDBG years. We will also discuss the 3-year community development plan. The 3-year community development plan is something that is developed using demographics and the review of the needs of the community. And what you do is you say, in the next 3 years, I'm going to use CDBG money for 1, 2, 3. And that's how it's organized. So if you don't get an application this year, you can kind of plan for it the next year. So we will submit a 3-year plan with our application this year, like we do every year. And what is CDBG? I mentioned CDBG is administered through the Department of Community Economic Development. It supports community development activities to build resilient communities. Some of the things that can be done with the program outlined on your agenda there, just briefly: water and sewer line replacement and improvements, housing rehabilitation, construction of affordable housing, construction, reconstruction of public community facilities, recreational facilities, public services, historic preservation, ADA accessibility, which is removal of architectural barriers, code enforcement, economic development, acquisition, relocation, clearance, and demolition. And the city has used almost for all of those things. In order for a project to be determined eligible, there's 3 national objectives that it must meet. 1, it has to benefit, and it's not all 3, it's one or the other. It has to benefit low to moderate income persons. I was asked, why are you having your meeting in East End? We want to have the meeting in the community locally for those that are in the lower income areas to have accessibility to. We will have meetings in other areas as well, but it is something that federally we're required to do. It would be bad to hold it really far away from the lower income areas, and they might not be able to attend. The second national objective is removal of slum or blight, which is just that, removing buildings that are dilapidated. And then there's urgent need, and it's kind of vague, but it's particular urgency, like a hurricane. And we don't get urgent need much. We had some flooding, and there's some DR grants you can get, but that's not a common one. So, as required, I will read. Communities throughout Pennsylvania are entitled based on a formula established by Act 179. Entitlement funding is set by this formula and administered by DCD, and this is what they call an entitlement grant. There's grantees throughout Pennsylvania that are entitled to get this money every year, and if you opt in to receive the money, you have to figure out how to spend it. There's also a competitive portion, which ranges from $100,000 up to no limit, no cap. And I've actually had the opportunity to submit a few of those. I've gotten around $4 million in competitive applications. They're a program where if someone opts out, they toss the money into a bucket. If someone doesn't use their money right, the money comes back into the bucket, and this creates a bucket of funds that you can apply for what they prioritize is water and sewage infrastructure, which is really important for Uniontown and other surrounding communities and Pennsylvania in general. So, as I mentioned, we are accepting comments today on previous use of funds, current use of funds, and future use of funds. The previous use of funds, I'm not going to read, I don't have to read exactly what we use the funds for, but this is just a review over the past 10 years, how they were used. If you want more details about any of the past 10 years of funding, I can provide that to you. So over the past 10 years, the City of Uniontown used their CDBG money for street reconstruction and paving, blight removal, emergency equipment, park rehabilitation, homeowner rehabilitation, sewer improvements, and code enforcement. And again, we can provide those project details if requested. Under the current CDBG program, I have made sure on your tables and to the side, and also provided online for those that are online, a table that's presented to City Council. I call it a quick glance sheet. This is an outline of our current program. It outlines all of our open contracts. So from 2019 up until 2021, of all the contracts that we have, outlines what our activities are. And the same as I update council, I will give you a quick update that Lemon Street Playground was an awarded project. It was awarded July 19th to a contractor, and it should begin in the next couple weeks. Unfortunately, we had to rebid that project. It was supposed to all be done at once, so the playground had to be installed prior to the rest of the work, but it was just the way that it was bid and required to be rebid to get the costs where we needed them and the extension on the grant. There were details to that. So I know I've had some questions. Why did you do that first? It had to happen. We're going to revise some of the funding from 2020 from code enforcement to the Lemon Street project to continue work there. There are two houses that are in dire need of demolition, and the Redevelopment Authority now owns one of those properties and has permission for demolition on one, and will soon own the other. We will take those buildings out. There is a pavilion that is going to be added to 2020, and now we'll have the pavilion and some open space there for future conversations of how it will be developed. That's a specific project we're accepting comments for. I've tried to get everyone in the neighborhood there at Lemon Street. I've talked to a lot of them. It would affect them more than others. I briefly mentioned demolition. In addition to 80 and 82 Lemon Street, we will also be demolishing 84 Murray and 39 Winona. There's an environmental review underway right now to make sure we're not hurting anything in the environment or bats or turtles or all federal required clearances that we need to get, and then those will be demolished. The other the other projects that are outlined on your sheet there are street reconstruction, 180 empowerment, and emergency tool, and all of those are under review for modification. The street reconstruction needs reviewed because the streets that were presented, some of them's been done since we applied. So now we have to adjust which streets we're going to do. The 180 empowerment was a shift in building, so now we need to review how we can address public service rather than brick and mortar on a building with 180 empowerment, one voice, one community, coming to a new building. And the emergency management tool was funded under another grant. So those are what we are accepting comments on. We're going to modify those, and the public has say, and if you want details on why, how it's modified, we can provide it. And what we all have been waiting for, or at least me, the fiscal year 2023 CDBG application. We've received our allocation, which on your agenda there is outlined $311,565. 18% of that is allocated for administration. Administration being my time, the part-time executive assistant's time, and supplies, and anything we need to make sure that grant is administered. So the applications are due October 27th, 2023. And the second hearing on September 13th is when we announce what the city is going to submit the application for. Sometimes you can submit several applications. Maybe there's 4 projects. The state has advised the city and advised all their other grantees that one project is better than several small ones. One, because then they only have one contract to oversee, and you only have one contract to oversee. When you have only a full-time person and a part-time person, management capacity becomes a question. So we are going to do our best to apply for a larger project instead of smaller other projects. But with the funding that we're talking about modifying, there could be funding here and there that we could do little projects with. City Council will consider that project that we propose and approve it on October 5th of 2023. So, at this time, if we have any questions and comments and project requests, I will say this is a project request form. If you have a specific project you would like to submit, I will leave these by the door and you can pick them up when you walk out. They'll be posted on the Facebook page. You fill this out. Some might not be applicable. You get as much information on there as you can, and this is how you submit a project. You can also discuss your project here this evening and ask questions about any of the other funding we have. So, any questions about everything I reviewed so far? Well, you could fill it out and submit it by email. Yeah, we could do it that way. The Redevelopment Authority is in process of updating their web page, which is going to give us some better sharing instead of just sharing on Facebook. And we also are looking at JotForm, which is a way for us to get great surveys. And this would be a breeze. It would make it really nice. So we'll let you know when we get there. So I'll leave those up front. And now, any project requests or comments? I will turn it over to the crowd. I know that was a lot.
Yes, I'm Bob Garbert from Calvary United Methodist Church. 2 blocks up on the left, we've got a pretty nice piece of property there that the church would like to participate in establishing a playground for the community, and specifically the younger children, the little ones who don't have any place to go or have anything to play with and ride on or try to tear apart or whatever they do. But we're interested in contributing the property depending on the situation, because we are a church and the city is a government, and something happens there somewhere between participating with church money and government money. But I'm sure that we can figure a way to satisfy those needs. And in the scheme of things, we don't know exactly. I don't know. It's not that we don't know. I don't know exactly what the community would like to have, because we are going to do it for the community and for the neighborhood. And Grant Street's not too far away, but these little kids and that we see running around the church all the time, playing basketball or trying to play basketball, getting them to Grant Street is a task. And without somebody, I think, being there to take care of it. And we are willing to participate in designing whatever the need is, whatever is established as the need for the playground. And one of those needs, I think, maybe should be a pavilion, because we have all these playgrounds everywhere and no place to get in and out of the sun when it's 90 degrees outside, which we've experienced recently. And the other thing that a lot of people don't think about is the sanitary aspect of a playground, because I think most kids who play end up having to go to the bathroom. And and where do they go? Go around the corner or whatever, and we don't have any corners, so that's not working. So maybe a restroom, and we're also would like to keep in mind handicapped facilities, because there are a lot of kids, there are a lot of people who have handicap facilities can not really participate in a regular playground. And but we would like to establish a group or some type that would decide what would be best for the neighborhood. And part of that being good for the neighborhood is where do we go to find some money to do this? So all these things we've been thinking about somewhat for years, but now I think it's coming to the point where with the recent formation of the Community Coalition and some of the drastic things that's happened in the community, that we ought to be able to hopefully get some help somewhere to do the things that the church would like to see done with that piece of property.
We had the opportunity to speak earlier, and Bob mentioned this. Nonprofits are eligible to apply for state and federal funds. With closer review, we can see how and what funding sources we could pursue. But a project like this, I see that they brought plans. I see that they have commitment. I see that they have a group of people that's willing to do the project. Those are all things that we consider when we're reviewing those projects. We have a scoring criteria that's used when a project is submitted. So next steps is they would complete a project request form and provide the details that they have to date, estimates, scope of work, timeline. And we consider scope of work, estimate, eligibility, the commitment, urgency, and if an environmental review can be done or is underway. And all of those, you won't have an environmental review right off the bat, but you could potentially have one in the future that would score you higher as we move forward. So once we get all these projects, those are the criteria that's used to determine how we submit. So, we don't just put the projects in a hat and pull one out or pick the one where looks good or someone's dog walker owns or something. We look at the scoring. So I think it's an excellent project, and you're right, I think that a community meeting in the area to identify the age of the children, to find out if a K through 5 park is better, or junior up park, or skate park, or what needs to be there. And then operations and maintenance is always a big deal with parks, because once you put a park, you have to have someone to go there and make sure it's clean and taken care of with your restrooms. So those are all things that when you're working on your program narrative to identify specifically who's going to maintain the facilities once it's there. So great project.
As an addendum to my presentation, we have seven people here from our church tonight, so
Oh, really?
there's an interest in it.
Also, you was asking before if I needed what type of nonprofit they are. So should they note that on their form?
They did provide, in a situation, they would identify it on the form, but they did give me a letter that identifies that they're a 501c3. And I'm going to do a little research, because I think there's two different kind of 501c3s. There's, is there like a religious one and then another type? I vaguely remember, but I'm going to do a little research. With this letter, it's going to allow me to take those next steps.
Okay. Speaking for myself on the city council, and hopefully I'm speaking for the rest of the city council, if that does go through and gets approved, naturally, the city council is going to approve it so they can have what type of playground or basketball court or whatever they need there for their church and the community.
I looked at the recreation in the area, and I could see that there's not recreation close to that area. So it's a good location.
If I can piggyback on Mr. Garbert, my name's Brent Peck. I'm also affiliated with Calvary Church. I would encourage folks to take a look at the property. Bob said kids trying to play basketball. if you drive by, there's a paved portion of the area that the community, someone in the community has put up a rickety basketball hoop that's being held up by almost nothing, and at any given moment you'll see 5, 10 kids out there playing. So there is a need.
That's an exciting project. In Greene County, we applied for sewage a lot, and it's just not as fun as park projects. So I'm excited to work on some park projects in Uniontown. Any other project requests or ideas? I mean, they don't have to be official requests. Any thoughts on projects?
I know with the heat lately, there's been a lot of interest in pool. Right now, I know the only pool in the county is the Flatwoods pool, and it's way outside of town. And I know we've looked into, or the city's looked into, a splash pad in the past. I don't know what all you need as far as a project proposal. Sounds like you need like the run rate and an estimate of the initial cost to build out the project. Is that all laid out in the form?
It is, and it's a good point you bring up, because as a resident, you might have project suggestions, or as a community group, you might have someone in your group that can give you those estimates, and you've done that groundwork. So residents can make a simple project request without a lot of detail. We can look at those projects, but they're just not as competitive. So a project like you're describing, identifying those things are going to give you higher scoring because you have a commitment to the projects, and you're more advanced. The project is more advanced. You know, there's a lot of ideas, and I run wild because I hear a lot of these great ideas, but there needs to be some backing to it. So something like that, you're right. You know, location, rate, is it open to public, and all of those details. Do I remember someone saying there's a swimming pool in a building somewhere? Maybe not. That's right. But that's not functional right now.
Neither is the building. The building's pretty much.
Just to piggyback off the park project at Calvary, if it was deemed that there could be infrastructure improvements like at crosswalks and things like that, could that be kind of added to the project in total? Because I would imagine that kids would be coming from this direction, but also from across Collinsville Street. And if there was, you know, an intersection that can be improved for access to that, could that be added on to the scope of that project?
Well, and it would definitely need to be considered. CDBG is a little funny. When you apply for a park project, it has a special code. And when you apply for sidewalks, it has a different code. It doesn't mean that we can't use more than one code, but that turns into separate activities. So, yeah, it can be considered, but I would get 2 separate project request forms. It could be one whole project, which probably would be more affordable or less expensive to have someone design it all together. But when you look at sidewalk projects, what the state looks at is they see who's walking on the sidewalks. So even if you might not think it's eligible, if they're coming from a certain block group, and you can not convince the state, but illustrate to the state that that's what they're doing, we would identify that, and that's how you determine eligibility. So Uniontown is, in its entirety, in the entire city, is considered a low to moderate income area. And it's like I don't want to say you're lucky, but to have that, but it's good for the city in terms of grant funding because it gives you access to different funds. So if, let's say, there was a pool and it was for the entire city, it would be very easy to determine eligibility. We would prove to them that the entire city would access this pool. It was open to the public, only the city. It wouldn't bring anybody in from any other townships, and we designate that pool, that way. Then it's eligible. Now, when you're looking in certain block groups, if, for instance, Sheepskin Trail, I know there's a lot of work there, and the Redevelopment Authority would love to look at more opportunities there and see how we can assist in different areas. But the CDBG program is not a grant that would really help with that too much, because it does bring in people from different areas where we can't prove that they're low to moderate income. However, if you had a restroom there, like Grant Street, we're looking at that project, and it needed to be ADA accessible, that is an eligible use, because ADA accessibility doesn't fit under the low to moderate income window. You're making a building accessible, and that's allowable as it is. So the sidewalks that you're talking about, ADA sidewalks, are fairly straightforward to get installed under the program.
I also believe that, I think K2 Engineering would have to do a feasibility study to get a approved crosswalk as of what he's talking about to be approved.
Well, and it's good
So-
you mention that. When you're looking at the engineering costs, when you're putting these projects together, you have to pay for engineering. You can actually use the CDBG grant to pay for engineering if you federally procure the contractor or professional service provider. What we're doing right now is we're in the process of federally procuring engineering services. We put an ad in the paper. We push out a notice on a pen bid, which is a bidding software. We outline the qualifications we need, and then we receive those, we read them, and we make a reasonable selection based on their qualifications and knowledge of Uniontown. And then that means CDBG money can pay this engineer. That's good that we're doing that, because our engineer can assist with your projects, and we can run that through the grant. So before there's a substantial amount of money spent on a project through design work, preliminary designs usually and estimates usually aren't too much to make that investment. And you can count that as your commitment. You can say, hey, we've put $5,000, $6,000 of engineering into this project, and that counts as a commitment and gets you a higher score. But just wanted to note that if you do have projects, I would reach out to the authority to discuss the projects to find out, how we can get the most bang for our buck and make sure it's under the grant. Any other comments? Project requests? Any comments coming through Facebook? Do we have anybody watching?
People watching, but nobody really has
Okay.
questions on it.
No questions. Well, on the agenda, it outlines the comments and project request period. If you were shy tonight and didn't want to talk, you can submit a letter, you can call, or you can email prior to August 25th, and that will consider you for this year's application and also the development of the 3-year plan. Anytime you think of a project that would be good, even if you're not sure if it would be eligible for CDBG, call the Redevelopment Authority. We want to know what projects are out there, and we want to keep them on a list. So then when we have state representatives and Congress and senators coming to us and saying, hey, this budget, we have earmarks and we can do this, we want to be prepared. So any inventory of projects is excellent for us to be able to get ahead of the game and get some of that funding through the other programs, not only CDBG. There's several other programs.
It's something that's a desire that I would like in my program that I speak with my daughter about a lot. And what I would love to see, we all talked about a splash pad and swimming pool, but what I would really like to see is a roller rink / like disco arena where we can cater to our high schoolers, because we have a lot of things in this community for our young children. And I'm happy with the direction that it's going. Like, there's a lot of nice programs here for our young elementary school and middle school children. But we are forgetting our high school children, and we're forgetting our, our 25-year-olds to our 30-year-olds to our 40-year-olds. I'm 50 and I know I can still roller skate. You know what I mean? So I think it would be, what I would like to see, what I would love to be a part of, is having a roller rink and disco arena event center for this area, for the members of this community.
I kind of have met and recognized folks. Can I get your name?
Angela Brown.
Angela Brown. And just make sure you're signed in on the sheet as well.
Yes.
And you live in the city.
I do.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
Well, in event centers, neighborhood facilities grants are available under CDBG, but there's other funding, and there's foundation grants, and there's several different things, and a lot of those types of needs events or centers is a good idea to get in front of the Planning Commission when they're reviewing the comprehensive plan, because in that there's a pillar for entertainment, there should be, where those types of things are considered. And if it's in the document, it gives us some leverage to apply for grants in the future. We can say, as of December 2022, we discussed the need for a center, and we can outline that in future grants. But I think you're right. When I first came, I wrote up like a 14-page paper. It was for a master's course that I'm in. I don't just write papers on the side, but I put this together to have an idea, and it surprised me, based on the census that I had pulled, that the highest demographic is young professionals. I thought it was more of a senior community, but 20 to 40 is the actual, in the data that I pulled, don't know what year, I think it was the most recent year, is that group that we should be gearing our planning projects to.
Just because at the end of the day, we're losing residents, and we're losing them because there's nothing for us to do, honestly, and we have to travel to Allegheny or Greene or Westmoreland County just to entertain our families. And I feel it would be a great way for us to keep residents in the city of Uniontown, and just in Uniontown period, because we're losing a lot of residents because of just sheer boredom. And, with our children who are in high school, the number one cause, honestly, is how they get in trouble, because their minds are idle, so they start to get in trouble. So we have to focus on our high schoolers and our middle-aged folks,
Well, and on the sign-in sheet, there's a place for email, and over the next few months, there will be other community meetings regarding finalizing a comprehensive plan. If you're interested in receiving emails or being part of that, because this is where it starts. Having a room full like this at a community planning meeting is just great. I remember when I first started and I cleaned up Greene County's program, there was like 3 people at the meeting, and they were county employees. So it's great to see everyone out here tonight, because that's the way, we don't know, even, of course I don't live in the community, I'm getting more familiar with it, but we don't know what's happening out there unless we hear it in your own community. So you attending the meetings, I see that council meetings are heavily attended, and I think that's the first step to our pivotal moment, is what I'm calling it, of Uniontown actually being where it can be, because I know it can be. Connellsville has gotten to a really great point, and there's opportunity where we're in a really good light with DCED right now, and we have a lot of options. Hi.
What did we want, or what did you want submitted by August the 27th? Or is it just a request?
August the 25th, and
Or 25th?
it would be this project request form filled out as best you can, and you can put a letter with it if you have an estimate, if you have a project design, even better. I would put all that together, but something as simple as just this form is sufficient. Is there any other comments?
I just would like to address what the young lady back there said. I happen to be on a committee evaluating scholarship applications for the county.
Yeah.
And some of the kids had the greatest ideas of how to improve Fayette County. And one of the young ladies, and I believe there may have been two, I did 300 and some, so it's a little hard to get them in order. But she suggested that we take space at the Uniontown Mall and make it into a roller rink or a dance place. She said the facility sitting there unused, it would be a safe place, and she said even her parents talk about they would spend time going to the mall when they were teenagers. Well, there's nothing at the mall anymore. So that might give kids, get them off the street, give them some place to go, keep them out of trouble. Well, keep them out of a lot of trouble, but, you know, they're kids. But that just seemed like something I'm sitting here thinking, that young lady had a really good idea, and people like you should know about that. So.
Well, when reviewing the existing facilities, I think, you know, that's really important to know what amenities you have already. Because we oftentimes identify all the deficiencies all the time,
Right.
instead of actually looking and saying, these are the good things. You know, we have East End Community Center. It's great. We have this mall that could be developed. We have One Voice, One Community that's starting up and providing these services. We want to focus on those things and make the investment in the areas that are already in that direction. So, yeah, I definitely want to know who owns the mall now.
I can get you that information.
Great. I will get it from you. Oh, yeah, it is across. Well, and we need to look more at multi-municipal cooperation. One of the initiatives we have is having those meetings with the municipalities. Multi-municipal cooperation is, the state just loves it. They want to see you working with other agencies. I don't know what we have permission to do as far as that, but oftentimes we would work with bordering townships in terms of water and sewage, but we could do more. We could work with them more because we touch.
I think like as far as like this idea, it would be better if it's centrally located because a lot of children can't get to the mall. So then you would have to worry about them safely getting to the destination, and then just like a lot of adults don't have transportation, so it'd be nice if it's somewhere where they can just walk to, and you know.
Well, we have
That's a great idea.
buses.
Yeah, there's that, but you know.
What transportation is it?
There's a fact bus, but you know, at certain hours they stop running. So, if you think of a disco or a roller rink, you know, that's nighttime, and that's, you know, a lot of us, we stay up past 9, or we stay up past 7. So, fact bus stops running at 7, I believe, or 6. So, transportation would play a big issue. And then there's a lot of children who just don't have the help that they, like other children would from their parents or their loved ones, and they're pretty much on their own, and it'd be great if they could just walk there and on their own devices to get to it, to have a little break.
Well, and there's probably a need for more than one different facility and center.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the city council has taken a great step forward with cooperation agreement with the redevelopment authority to discuss work group sessions for transportation and actually reviewing the streets and what needs done on the streets, what funding's available, long-range planning, because that's, you know, you have to have a foundation.
That Uniontown Mall, that would be an excellent place for an inside pool too. You know, like you said, the space is already.
we already got a swim.
Well, back in the, I'll give my age up, I guess. Back in the 70s, right after it opened, all the kids around my age, we had no problem getting to the Uniontown Mall, and there was no fact around that.
I understand, but I just, you know, I like, you know, South Union is really developed very well. They have a lot of activities up there, a lot of eateries, there's a lot lot of action, and I would love to see that vibe come to the city of Uniontown.
Absolutely.
I would love for it to come back this way. Because when I moved away like 30 years, a long time ago, it was live over here. Of course, it was crime, but it wasn't so bad. But it was live over here. You didn't have to go all the way to South Union just to have a good time, you know, and a good, honest good time. You know what I mean? So I would like to see that vibe and that life just come back to this community.
Oh, and you're right, it was live. I mean, this is a 4-person staff for the redevelopment authority. Right now, we have a 1-person and 1 part-time. The city hall was bustling. The rooms were full, file rooms. You can see the activities. You could see all the grants that were submitted. It was just a bustling building, and then we can do that again.
Just for reference, the company that owns the mall is called NAMDAR, N-A-M-D-A-R.
You're the man that makes things happen. Okay, if there's no other comments, I appreciate everyone's attendance. We will close out this meeting. I'll have these forms up here for you to take with you on your way out. I'm going to be here if you want to have a conversation, and you can always call the redevelopment authority, and either myself or Andrea, the glue that keeps everything together, will be there to talk with you. So thank you. We will adjourn at 6:47.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Sure. I just made them this afternoon. Hot off the press.